Bienvenido al video podcast de Todo Logística. Soy Mario Alonso y junto a mi equipo queremos ponerte en contacto con nuestros clientes. Ellos son los verdaderos protagonistas de esta industria, apasionados por la logística, el transporte, los puertos y el comercio exterior.
Este programa es patrocinado por Guía Logística, una red de especialistas a su disposición.
Hello, Chris. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you very much. I'm speaking to you from Sri Lanka, an island in Asia between the coasts of eastern India and western Thailand. So I'm in Asia, locked down a little bit, but I'm all good. It's good here.
Really nice. Really far from here. It's a pleasure to have you with us with this interview with Todo Logística and Comercio Exterior. Well, Chris, I would like to start asking you, for those who doesn't know you yet, who is Chris Devonshire-Ellis?
Who is Chris Devonshire-Ellis? Well, the first thing I have to tell you is that I'm in the mountains of Sri Lanka at the moment, at an elevation of about 3,000 meters, but I'm listening, maybe I can show you, to at home, to this Spanish, won the best Latin Jazz Grammy a while ago, and to this singer, amongst others, Tulipa. I think a lot of people in Brazil will be familiar with that. So
yes.
I'm by listening to some fantastic Latin and Brazilian music. Culturally, I really appreciate Brazil and Latin America. Who am I? I am the chairman of DEZAN SHIRA and Associates. Who are they? They are a tax law consulting practice based in Asia. We handle only foreign direct investment into the Asia region, which includes China, where we have 12 offices, including and one in Hong Kong. India, where we have 3 offices. Vietnam, where we just opened our 3rd office a couple of weeks ago. Indonesia, Singapore, and other countries in Asia. But principally, we're in the ASEAN region, India, and China. I'm the chairman of the company. We also own, DEZAN SHIRA also owns a publishing company, which publishes business information in different languages, including Portuguese and Spanish, Asia Briefing, and subsidiary titles, China Briefing, India Briefing, ASEAN Briefing, and so on and so forth. So we're a medium-sized practice in Asia, assisting foreign investors to come into the region, and that includes investors from Brazil and South America. That's who we are. We've been around since 1992. About 600 people work for us, and we have 28 offices. We're an established practice. That's who we are.
That's incredible, Chris. You sound like you are the best partner a company can have to grow the business in Asia. And
well, we try to be the best. We compete with the big players that people know, such as the big blue chip law firms and the big 4 accounting practices. We have to compete with those guys, and they have huge resources. We're not in that league, but we do try hard. And I think sometimes being a little bit more of a smaller business that has to fight for our clients and fight for our own work, it perhaps makes us sometimes, I think, a little bit more efficient and effective for our clients to use a firm like us.
Understand, Chris. Well, the next question I would like to ask you is, well, talking about economy in the middle of this pandemic time, what could you tell us about e-commerce challenges?
Well, that's a really interesting and very diverse question. For sure, what has happened has been that the old style of doing business, people writing things down, people maybe doing on computer individually, that's changed. Instead, there are computer programs that can process these things far quicker, with far more accuracy, and without the need to have so many people employed in a business. There's also been, and I think this is going to have a lasting impact, the issue that people have to work from home. And I think that's, this has been tried. This is not a new thing. It's been tried 20 years ago. But now I think the need for people to be working at home gives employees more freedom. They can spend more time with their children. So I think that some of the benefits of being able to work from home are going to be married mothers, even single mothers. They can work from home and keep an eye on their children without having to go to the office and leave them. I think also for men, we save on costs through having to go to the office. And I think the businesses globally have come to a point of view whereby they are much more prepared to accept employees not being in the office than they were before. And I think the thing that this pandemic has done is to make that normal, as opposed to before COVID-19, where it was unusual. So there's been a shift there. Technology is part of that, because we have to, businesses need to make sure that their staff are actually working and not hanging out in the bathroom or going to the sauna or going somewhere else to keep them working. So technologies to keep an eye on staff, I think, is reasonable to a certain degree. But also the main issue, I think, is security. So working from home as opposed to being in the office means that there's an extension of security which needs to be put into business platforms and IT technologies. And this is important for company owners to start to understand how they can do that. The technology exists, which is great, but basically making home part of the office. How do you do that? New technologies are there to allow just that to happen. So this is the way forward. This is going to be the new normal, as people like to say.
Yeah, the new normal. That's right. And well, Chris, we would like to know more about your vision, of the US-China trade war. What could you tell us about it?
Again, Luciano, you ask some very, very deep questions. I admire that. The US-China trade war is only a war on one front. It's only a war on one front, and that is a political war. It's not a trade war in terms of people that actually do business. The people that actually do business are kind of happy with the American businessmen, are kind of happy with China. The Chinese businessmen are happy with America. It's the politicians which are unhappy. Now, China has been running a trade deficit with the United States of hundreds of billions of dollars over the past few years. And I think President Trump, in his infinite wisdom, has decided that is not acceptable. And that is a bit of a problem because, first of all, he's put sanctions on China. He introduced the trade war. He's trying to reduce the deficit between how much the United States exports to China and how much China exports to the United States. But I think that although there are some legitimate concerns, there always are in trade, dumping, for example, these sorts of things are not cool and should not be permitted to happen. But if the United States wishes to have products which are made at a cheaper overall cost than could be obtained in the United States, if President Trump wishes to cut that off, then goods in the United States are going to become more expensive. So there's that angle. There's also an angle which suggests that the United States feels that China has become a little bit too powerful, is selling perhaps a little bit too much to the United States. And so therefore, the US is using sanctions on China as a way to diversify some of that China manufacturing away to markets which are manufacturing in Vietnam, which is next to China. India is another one. Indonesia doesn't border with China, but it's very close across the sea. So I think that really the impact of the US sanctions, although it reads well in the US press that America is being strong on China, there's also a need, and I think a justifiable one, for the United States to try and move some of that China manufacturing out of China and into subsidiary countries such as Vietnam, Indonesia, I mentioned India, and others. I think generally that's a good thing, although I don't like the way the Americans have approached it. I think that's not been particularly sophisticated. Either way, these are two huge economies. The United States cannot live without China. I don't think this decoupling people have been talking about is realistic. The economies are intertwined. Interestingly enough, the Chinese government themselves have said that they wish to diversify some of their manufacturing base elsewhere. The US-China trade war has just made that happen, perhaps a bit faster than Beijing had wanted. So I think when you add it all up, not necessarily a bad thing, but businesses, of course, need to be prepared for cheap manufacturing, export products. Now's not the time to be doing that in China and exporting to the United States. You need to be doing that in India, Vietnam, and elsewhere in ASEAN. But the companies who want to sell to China, which is a huge, growing commercial middle-class market, then there's no need to leave China. It's definitely a growth market that people should be interested in.
Perfect, Chris. And I have a next one. What could you tell me about China's Belt and Road Initiative? I was reading about that.
I've been studying the Belt and Road Initiative for a long time. I've travelled to many of the countries. In fact, I also lecture on the Belt and Road Initiative at St.Petersburg's High School of Economics, which is part of a state university. China has been. There are problems with the United States in terms of its use of trade as a weapon, and this is problematic. They have been bullying countries. Russia is one, Iran another. They're even now starting to pick fights to the European Union, and the European Union states have been friends, for decades. So the United States is becoming a bit more belligerent. It's becoming more aggressive. It's becoming more aggressive to China too. So what the Belt and Road is essentially doing, to really get back to the roots of your question, is the Belt and Road is diversifying China's supply chains so that it doesn't have to be so dependent upon products from the United States. It is still dependent on the United States for products such as semiconductors, which is a big issue for China because they make a lot of the world's smartphones. So having the US as the sole provider of that technology is problematic when a lot of your IT production depends on US-based semiconductors and related technology. So the Belt and Road really exists to introduce new sources of supply chains to China so that it can continue to make not cheap buckets and spades, but to continue to make high-tech products. And the new generation, we're seeing 5G, China's technology there is clearly superior to that of the US. The US has reacted to this by saying it's full of spyware. I don't believe that to be the case. But in any event, the Belt and Road, which includes hugely important countries like Russia and most of the Eurasian region, parts of Latin America, of course, and beyond, is designed to secure supplies for China for the rest of the century. So that's what it's really designed to do. So they can not rely so much on the United States and its policies, but rely instead perhaps on countries which would welcome that trade. And that's really what it's all about. It's a very simple thing. Building the infrastructure to allow alternative supply chains to exist. That's the deal.
Perfect, Chris. And I would like to ask you the last question. If you could have to give a personal advice, you know, at this specific pandemic time, personal advice to an entrepreneur, to a person, to a businessman, what would you recommend him?
This is a very challenging time. So I think I have a few things to say about that. For young entrepreneurs that are out there that are struggling and it may be difficult with your businesses, I understand that. I've been in that position myself, and I feel very, very. Don't give up. Don't give up. Now, there's an interesting thing I remember once when I was struggling. In fact, I had a business also close on me. It was very traumatic, and I had to live with no money for a long time, actually, for about a year, and live in not so nice things. I've been there. Mm-hmm. The important thing is, whatever happens, even if something bad happens and you have to close your business and you've lost money and you've done all these things, it's what you do next. What you do next is what matters. And what you have to do is pick yourself up off the floor and say, I'm not going to let this beat me, and get up and go and make another business. So I've done it, and I'm sure that you guys out there that may be struggling at the moment, maybe your businesses are going to close. I feel very bad for you, but it's not the end. All you have to do is dust yourself down, go for it another time. For businesses which are struggling, but which are going to be okay, you yourselves listening to this will know who you are. My advice is this: keep hold of your staff. Don't let your staff go. Wherever you can, if they're good quality staff, just try and keep them with your business. Don't let them go. This is a time for self-sacrifice. Owning a business doesn't necessarily have to mean that you have to make money all the time. Sometimes you have to give, and I know as business owners, we always have to give. Sometimes we have to give a bit more, and this is that time. So for SMEs, I think these are the messages. Don't let your staff go, because there will be a recovery and you will need them then. And for businesses which the future is not good, the question to ask yourselves is, okay, I might have to close my business. What am I going to do next? And what you're going to do next is going to be better than this time. So lessons learned. Protect yourselves. Don't borrow money. Keep your expenses down. Be smart, and you'll be fine. That's my message.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a wonderful message for all these people we want to inspire through this. So I want to say again, it was an honor to have the chance to interview you, and thank you so much for this time with Todo Logística and Comercio Exterior.
Okay. God bless Brazil, and to everyone that's been listening to this, and Luciana for hosting me. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Este programa ha sido patrocinado por Guía Logística, una red de especialistas a su disposición. Visite todologística.com. Si el episodio fue de su agrado, no olvide dejarnos sus comentarios.